My name is Robert Hensley. I am 71 years old. 3 months ago, I went to the hospital for a routine checkup. It was supposed to take 2 hours. When I came back home that afternoon, my key didn't work. My son had changed the locks on the house I built with my own hands, the house I had lived in for 40 years. And when I called him, his exact words were, "You don't live here anymore, Dad. It's time you understood that." What he didn't know was that I had already spoken to my lawyer 3 weeks earlier, and what happened over the next 2 months would leave him and the wife who put him up to it with nothing. I built that house in 1986, back when my son Marcus was only 4 years old. I poured the foundation myself with 2 friends from the plant where I worked as a machinist for 31 years. My wife, Diane, planted the oak tree in the front yard the same week we moved in. That tree is taller than the house now. Diane passed away 6 years ago. Cancer. After she was gone, the house felt too big and too quiet. So when Marcus and his wife Kimberly said they were struggling to make rent after Marcus lost his job, I told them to move in with me. Just until they got back on their feet, I said. I was happy for the company, if I'm honest. The house didn't feel so empty anymore. That was 2 years ago. At first, it was good. Marcus found part-time work. Kimberly took over the cooking, and I'll admit, she's a good cook. I paid the property taxes, the insurance, kept up the yard like I always had. They didn't pay rent, but I never asked for it. It was still my house, and they were my family. Things started changing about 8 months in. Small things at first. Kimberly began redecorating rooms without asking, taking down photos of Diane, replacing them with things she liked. I let it go. Then Marcus started talking about the future of the house at dinner, how it was too much house for one old man, how he and Kimberly were thinking about starting a family, and the house would be perfect for kids, if it were properly theirs. I should have paid closer attention. I didn't. About 4 months ago, Marcus asked me to sign some papers. He said it was for a home equity line of credit, something to help him start a small contracting business. He said my name needed to be on it because the house was in my name, and it would just make things easier for tax purposes. I trusted my son. I signed. I found out much later that the papers weren't for a line of credit. They were papers designating Marcus as my financial power of attorney, giving him legal authority over my financial decisions. I signed it in my own kitchen, at my own table, without reading it carefully, because my son asked me to. Not long after, I started noticing things missing. Diane's wedding ring, which I kept in a small box in my dresser, gone. When I asked Kimberly if she'd seen it, she looked at me strangely and said, "Robert, I think you're getting forgetful. Maybe it's time we talked about that." That phrase, "maybe it's time we talked about that," became something I heard constantly. Every time I questioned anything, misplaced my glasses, or forgot a name for a second the way anyone does, it was, "Dad, maybe it's time we talked about that." I started to doubt myself. I started to wonder if something really was wrong with me. It was my neighbor, Frank, who I've known for 30 years, who first said something that shook me awake. He mentioned that he'd seen a moving truck at my house on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at physical therapy for my knee. When I asked Marcus about it, he said it was just Kimberly donating some old furniture to charity. I let it go because what else was I supposed to do? Accuse my own son of lying to my face? 3 weeks before the hospital visit, I went looking for my checkbook to pay the property tax bill, and it wasn't in the drawer where I always kept it. Kimberly told me Marcus had taken over the finances since I was getting confused about payments. I hadn't asked him to. I never authorized that. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt very wrong. So the next morning, while Marcus and Kimberly were both out, I called my old friend Harold, who happens to be a retired attorney. I told him everything. The power of attorney papers, the missing checkbook, the ring, the comments about my memory. Harold went quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Robert, I want you to come into my office tomorrow. Bring every document you can find. I think you need to understand what you actually signed." What Harold showed me made my stomach turn. The power of attorney I signed didn't just cover financial decisions. Buried in the legal language was a clause giving Marcus authority to manage and, under certain conditions, transfer property held in my name, including the house, if a doctor determined I had diminished capacity. And there was something else. Harold pulled records showing that 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had scheduled an appointment for me with a new doctor. Not my regular doctor of 15 years, but someone I'd never heard of. A doctor whose practice specialized in geriatric cognitive assessments. I hadn't scheduled that appointment. Marcus had scheduled it for me and told me it was a routine checkup. That's when it hit me. This was never about my health. It was about proving I was incompetent, so Marcus could legally take control of the house. I sat in Harold's office and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, but a cold, clear kind of anger. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that plans. "Harold," I said, "I want to know exactly what my rights are. And I want to know how to protect what's mine before they realize I know anything." Harold smiled the way old lawyers do when a fight is about to get interesting. "Robert, let's start with revoking that power of attorney. Today." Over the next 3 weeks, I did everything Harold advised, quietly, without a single word to Marcus or Kimberly. First, we formally revoked the power of attorney and filed the revocation with the county, so there would be a legal record proving it no longer existed. Second, Harold helped me document everything. The missing ring, the checkbook, the suspicious doctor's appointment, even a recorded phone call. Completely legal in our state with one-party consent, where Kimberly, thinking I was simply confused, said something I will never forget. "Once your dad's declared incompetent, this whole headache is over. And the house is basically ours." Basically ours. Third, and most important, I went to that cognitive assessment appointment Marcus had scheduled, but not alone. Harold came with me as my legal representative, and I brought along my actual doctor's full medical records, showing 15 years of consistent, sharp, completely competent evaluations. The new doctor reviewed everything and, unsurprisingly, found no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Harold made sure that finding was documented in writing, with a certified copy for our files. Then I did one more thing. I went to the bank where the house deed and my accounts were held, and, since I was still fully and legally in control of my own affairs, I added a formal notice to my accounts and had Harold draft a new, ironclad will and a trust, moving the house and my savings into a legal trust that Marcus had no access to, no claim over, and no ability to touch, now or after I was gone. The date I chose to confront them was the day of the actual checkup Marcus thought was still happening. I left the house that morning like normal. Marcus even said, "Good luck at your appointment, Dad." With a little smile I now understood completely. I came back 4 hours later. My key didn't turn in the lock. I knocked. Kimberly opened the door part way, chain still latched, and said, "Robert, we think it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while. Marcus is filing some paperwork on your behalf. It's for your own good." Marcus came up behind her. "Dad, you don't live here anymore. It's time you understood that." I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "Marcus, I'd like you to open the door. I have some paperwork of my own to show you." They let me in, more out of confusion than courtesy. I laid 3 documents on my own kitchen table. The table I built. The revoked power of attorney, filed and certified. The cognitive assessment, showing full competency, filed the same week Marcus scheduled it behind my back. And the new trust documents, dated and notarized, showing the house was no longer even in a position where a power of attorney could touch it, even if Marcus somehow still had one. I watched the color leave Marcus's face as he read. "You had no right," he started. "I had every right," I said. "It's my name on the deed. It was my name on the power of attorney I revoked. And it was my choice as a fully competent adult, confirmed in writing by a licensed physician 3 days ago, to protect what your mother and I built. What I don't understand, Marcus, is why my own son needed to lie to me, drug me with false checkups, and try to prove I was losing my mind just to take a house I would have left to you anyway." Kimberly tried to speak. I held up a hand. "I have a recording of you, Kimberly, saying the house was basically ours once I was declared incompetent. I won't play it for you. My lawyer already has it. I didn't call the police that day. I didn't need to. What I did was far more effective. I gave Marcus and Kimberly 30 days to find another place to live. The house, fully secured in the trust, was never at risk again. I updated my will properly with the help of Harold, leaving the house eventually to my granddaughter, Marcus's own daughter, in a trust she cannot access until she's 25 and cannot be touched by either of her parents. Marcus tried twice to reach out and apologize. I listened both times. I didn't shut the door on my son completely. He is still my blood, and I still love him, even now. But love and trust are not the same thing, and I made that very clear. Kimberly, I have not spoken to since that day, and I don't expect to. The oak tree Diane planted still stands in the front yard of the house that is, once again, undeniably and legally mine. Some mornings I sit under it with my coffee and think about how close I came to losing everything I built, simply because I trusted the wrong person with a signature. If there's one thing I want anyone watching this to take away, it's this. No matter how much you love your children, protect your paperwork. Read everything before you sign it. And never, ever let anyone convince you that questioning your own family makes you a bad parent. Sometimes it makes you a smart one.